The most interesting thing about Gears of War E-Day, we think is not that it's taking players back to the beginning, but that it's actually taken them back to a time when nobody knew what Gears of War was. Now this might sound strange considering the franchise has existed for nearly 20 years, but when you really think about it, most Gears games have always taken place after the world had already changed. The locusts were already known, cities had already fallen, humanity had already adapted to a life in a permanent state of war. Players stepped into stories where the apocalypse had become normal. Now E-Day is different. This is a moment before people learn how to survive. The moment before the military had any answers. This is in fact the moment before Marcus became a legend. And that perspective alone has the potential to make this one of the most compelling entries the series has actually ever produced. Officially, Gears of War E-Day is a prequel set 14 years before the original game, placing players directly in the middle of Emergence Day, which is the catastrophic event that began the Locust War. The story follows younger versions of Marcus and Dominic as they witness the first Locust attack against humanity. And this project is actually being developed by the Coalition alongside People Can Fly, and it's built entirely with the use of Unreal Engine 5. What is in fact fascinating is how perfectly this setting aligns with what made the original Gears trilogy so memorable. When people look back at the first games, they often remember the action. They remember the chainsaw duels, the exploding enemies, the giant monsters, and intense firefights. But beneath all of that was a feeling that became increasingly rare as the series eventually evolved, which was basically fear. Not horror in the traditional sense, but uncertainty. Gears games worked because humanity felt vulnerable. The world wasn't filled with superheroes, it was just filled with soldiers trying to survive a war that seemed impossible to win. Every victory felt temporary, every safe location felt fragile. The locusts were terrifying because they represented something unknown. And over time, familiarity naturally reduced that fear. Players learned the enemy, they learned the world, they learned how everything worked. And E-Day offers the Coalition a chance to restore that uncertainty by putting players in the same position as the characters themselves. Marcus and Dom aren't experienced locust hunters yet. They aren't famous heroes, they are young soldiers suddenly forced to face something no one could have predicted. The developers have repeatedly emphasized that this story focuses on more vulnerable and inexperienced versions of both characters, allowing players such as us to see them before years of war transform them into the hardened veterans fans remember. That approach could have a huge impact on the tone of the game itself. Imagine waking up in a city that appears completely normal. Traffic moves, the streets, business areas are open, families are planning the day, the pendulum wars may have ended, but people are beginning to believe life can finally move forward. And suddenly the ground opens. Not in one place, everywhere. Buildings collapse without warning, entire neighborhoods disappear, communication breaks down, military forces struggle to understand what they're actually fighting. Within hours, civilization begins to unravel. That's what makes Emergence Day such a powerful setting in our minds. It's not just another battle, it's the day an entire world loses its sense of security. And if the Coalition executes that idea properly, players may actually end up experiencing something closer to a disaster movie than like a traditional military shooter per se. One of the most exciting aspects of the project is the relationship between Marcus and Dom. Fans already know where their friendship eventually leads. They know the sacrifices both characters make, they know the loyalty that develops between them over the decades of conflict, and what they haven't seen is the beginning. According to developers, E-Day is being tested as an origin story not only for the Locust Wars itself, but also for the bond between Marcus and Dom. So the game is expected to place significant focus on the relationships, giving players a pretty good or a closer look at the personal experiences that actually shaped them long before the events of the original trilogy. That focus feels especially important because modern gaming audiences tend to connect most strongly with character-driven stories. Big explosions and visual spectacle are exciting, of course, but they rarely become memorable on their own. What stays with players are relationships, difficult choices, emotional moments to feel authentic. Gears has actually always been surprisingly good at those things. See, Dom's story remains one of the most emotional character arcs in gaming history, and much of that impact actually came from the genuine friendship between him and Marcus. Exploring the earlier stages of that relationship gives the Coalition an opportunity to create a story that feels both familiar and fresh at the same time. The technology behind the project is quietly impressive. The Coalition has openly described E-Day as its most ambitious game yet and has highlighted the significant leap in capabilities provided by Unreal Engine 5. And according to the studio, the game features dramatically increased environmental detail, advanced destruction systems, ray trace lighting and reflections, and vastly more detailed character models compared to previous series. Normally, you see, technical discussions can feel disconnected from actual gameplay. However, in E-Day, those improvements seem directly connected to the experience the Coalition wants to create. A story about civilization, collapse and benefits enormously from stronger environmental technology, the franchise thrives on physicality. Weapons feel heavy, characters move with weight, environments respond violently to combat. So Unreal Engine 5 appears to be giving the Coalition the tools they needed to push those strengths further than ever before. Another encouraging sign is the team commitments to recapturing the atmosphere of the original games. Their goal is to build something that feels recognizably Gears while still introducing fresh ideas and improvements. That balance may ultimately determine the game's success. Nostalgia alone isn't enough. Players want the emotional intensity of classic Gears, but they also expect modern design standards. They want tighter controls, smarter AI, better storytelling, stronger pacing, more sophisticated combat systems than what existed 20 years ago. Fortunately, the Coalition appears aware of that challenge. Rather than treating E-Day as just a simple throwback, the studio seems to be approaching it as an opportunity to redefine the franchise's foundation for a new generation. The community response so far reflects that excitement. Across forums and social media discussions, many fans have expressed enthusiasm about the return of darker themes, more focused storytelling, and the possibility of seeing the Locust through new eyes again. Part of that anticipation actually comes from timing. See, the Gears franchise has actually been absent from the spotlight for several years now. Fans have been waiting for a true mainline experience capable of reigniting excitement around the series, and E-Day feels positioned to be exactly that. So here's the thing. As for release timing, Microsoft has officially confirmed a 2026 launch window, although a specific date, of course, has not been announced. Some fans continue to speculate about a September release, but for now, that remains speculation rather than confirmed information. Still, regardless of when it arrives, Gears of War E-Day already feels different from most prequels. Emergence Day isn't a side chapter in Gears history, it is the foundation of everything that follows. Every battle, every sacrifice, every tragedy, and every victory actually traces back to that single moment when the world changed forever.